nobody is going to give you those answers that you want or don't want unless you go find it. And what I mean by that is go talk to a random person. And I'm not saying this to you, but just in general, right? General practice. You're gonna get a more accurate response and feedback from a random person who you're offering to buy coffee on the street than anyone else.
Hey everyone, welcome to a new episode of Oh My Curry Goodness podcast. I'm your host Hamza Islam, and this is a podcast where I talk to Gen Zers who are making a difference in their communities about their journey and how they became the person they are today. And my goal for each episode on this podcast is that as the listener, you're able to take a few things away from each guest as you continue to write your own story and realize that it doesn't matter what your background is or who you are, anyone is capable of creating change and inspiring the world and whatever that may be. And I also want people to realize that it doesn't matter what you are doing because at the end of the day, we are all human beings. And it's also important to talk about the times that we have endured certain obstacles or doubt or imposter syndrome, because these things are real and ultimately what make us human beings. So I do hope you guys enjoy the podcast, and I am really appreciative of all the support I've received so far during this podcast. Now, transitioning to my guest, I'm very excited because as I've repeated many times throughout this podcast, I am a student at The Ohio State University. My guest this week is Edriss Ndiaye, who competes in foil fencing at The Ohio State University. And if you don't know what that is, I'm sure we're going to talk about that during the episode. But in addition, he is also the founder of the Blok app. This app has a vision to transform the way people plan their social lives and engage with calendar apps. And I think it's a very interesting way of being able to organize time, because if there's one thing I've learned is that time is very valuable and precious. So I'm very looking forward to having this conversation, and it's always great to connect with a fellow Buckeye. So Edriss, thank you so much for joining the podcast.
Oh man, I'm very glad you had me here. And time is very valuable. I'm glad we can connect on that note from the beginning. Time is valuable.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm gonna make sure to say your last name correctly because it's Ndiaye, correct? Ndiaye, like not India,
Yeah,
but India or Ndiaye, right?
yeah, like NDI.
Okay, Edriss Ndiaye. Oh, okay, great.
Perfect. Yep, there, no, that was the best one. That was a good one right there. There we go.
No, I do apologize. Yeah, it's okay because at
I-
Ohio State they get my name mixed up too. I get hazmat, I get asthma. So it's
yeah. I'd have had address before. I'd have had address. You ever address? Yeah, literally. Nah, but I mean, all that matters is that you try.
yeah. No, we'll get through it. But before we talk about the Blok app and everything with that, let's talk about foil fencing, because it's a sport that, for me personally, I've seen in the Olympics, and I'm sure people either have heard of it or have never heard of it. But I feel like the best way to describe the sport is that it's kind of like what you see in movies, how pirates fight, where whether they have like those thin swords and they start fighting each other. Obviously, that's a terrible explanation on my end, but I would love to start by talking about what it is and how do you know if you're winning? Because usually I know someone won based on if they scream. So it's like, so if they scream, that means they won. And so, yeah, feel free to
Yeah.
talk about that.
No, yeah. Well, in addition to, I guess, the score, yeah, screaming is often like the most common celebration whenever you score a point. But with foil fencing, the foil fencing is one of the types of fencing, right? So we have three disciplines. To knock them out quick, there's foil, which I do. That's the coolest one. But then there's epee and saber. Epee, now the differences, right? Epee, your whole body is the target. And saber, it's like your upper half and your arms, but like it's like a cutting motion. So like you would hit somebody like with the lateral part of your blade opposed to like the tip. I don't know if that makes sense or not. But and then with foil, it's just your torso. And like not your arms and not your legs, just your torso. So what it is, I mean, pirates and I are doing the same thing. We are trying to hit the person in front of us and not get hit. Except for I think the pirates, they have a greater stake at hand because if they get hit, I think it's wraps. But here, if we get hit, it's a point that's not in our direction. When it comes to like the points and the scoring, there's a referee who making sure that this person is initiating their point, following the proper rules and guidelines, and those all the rules and guidelines pretty much entail around just making sure that the priority is going to the person who is initiating the action, right? So obviously, if one person goes for a hit and another person goes after, it goes to the person who went first. If somebody hits, somebody blocks them and hits them, then it goes to the other person. So that's just it at a glance. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I do applaud you for the fact that you're able to explain it because I don't know if that's something you have a hard time discussing with other people, like when they say what is fencing. Because for me, because I grew up in a South Asian household, so one of my favorite sports is obviously soccer, but cricket because that's very common. And so when people go, "What exactly is
Love cricket.
cricket?" and it's like baseball, but then you have all these rules, and so when you do talk about sports that are not common in society, if that makes sense, it is difficult to like really explain the objectives of the sport and also like why you love it so much, if that makes sense.
Oh yeah, no, for sure. I mean, I would say for me the only reason it's probably not difficult is probably because the amount of times that I've explained it. Definitely like when I was younger and I'd be describing it, I like mid conversation, I would just send them a link. I'll be like, here, go look at that YouTube video. But over time, I think, yeah, I mean, the more that I've learned to understand the sport and kind of make it simpler for myself and being able to narrow it down to the idea of hit, not get hit, that helps a lot. Many
Yeah, that makes
ways.
sense. Let's talk about being an athlete at Ohio State because for many people, when it comes to being passionate about what sport they compete in, they usually start, or a lot of people start early on in their career, like maybe like, or career meaning like maybe 4, 5, 6, very little. And then there are very few athletes like yourself who started competing at a sport particularly late. Not like 17 or 18, but like 12 or 13. And very few athletes who start a sport late actually go on to be really successful. And I'm sure you still have obstacles that you're trying to overcome, but like you kind of remind me of Joel Embiid in the NBA, where I think he picked up the sport at around 15 or 16, and now people say he's like one of the best basketball players in the world. And so while you're starting late, what do you think it was that allowed you to be able to compete in fence or in the sport today? Because competing at Ohio State or competing in any college is extremely difficult. So what do you think it was that you had that even though you were late, you were still able to compete at the highest level today?
I would say it's a lot of things. I would say first off, it definitely had to do a lot of like obviously my God-given ability and talent. And I think that's just a given for any athlete at that level. So when it comes to how that ranks up, we throw that out the door because when you're at this point, everybody's talented. You know, it's not about that anymore. But being talented, you know, that it helped me skip a few steps. But what really allowed me to compete at the high level and still compete at the high level, definitely support. Um, I think that in throughout my career and my come up, with the lack of support that I've had, it's allowed me to grow over people and being appreciative of the support that I did have helped me just want to chase that more. I think that's definitely number one. I know especially my mom and my grandma, they had made a lot of sacrifices that are very distinct and that a lot of family members would not do for their children to help them see their dreams. And that definitely played a huge role outside of myself. I mean, when it comes to me, I'm just a dog. I mean, every single time I go to practice, it's compete. I every single time I would go to practice when I was younger, it was compete. Even when I had gotten out of my beginner class and it was time for me to fence the older guys when I was like 13, 14, and they had more experience, I just said, I mean, I got the same thing in my hand as you, so I'm about to win. And I won't lie, it's been easier like said than done to always have that attitude, right? But I think that since I've been able to keep that attitude at least 2 days out of the three, and always working to keep that attitude 3 days out of 3 days, or 5 days out of 5 days, and always pushing to that, it helped. Another thing is I really compartmentalized. Like, and that's something that as I've been older now, I'm able to recognize. And I recently like kind of learned this about myself. I saw a lot of success and still do because I'm able to just do what I got to do in the moment. As especially as a kid, I didn't have any idea that I would be at Ohio State and for the first 3, 4 years, fencing in college was honestly just like something that other people said they could see me doing, but I never really had written down and envisioned for myself. And a part of that at the time could be also because I didn't believe in myself as much and because of my background and excuses that I may have made for myself at the time. I kind of like would sell myself short. But in being able to accept the discomfort constantly and still just go to practice on time. I'd get there 5, 10 minutes early. I'll leave there 20 to 30 minutes after everybody else. And just being able to do that and do that and do that and take the L's when they happen and take the wins for what they are, I would say has been helping me and will continue to.
Yeah, and it's really cool because you remind me of this mentality of the first one in, last one out. That kind of mentality because you're going in early and then you're leaving pretty late. Tell me about and you mentioned about the support that your mom and your grandma have shown throughout your journey. Tell me how I want to like you to talk about more about what that support meant to you because you talk about getting having things that don't go your way or getting a lot of losses rather than successes. These are things that people don't really like when we run into an obstacle. It's very easy to kind of give up on what we believed in. So tell me about what that has meant to you and how they've been able to help you, especially indirectly, because obviously you have coaches and people who know the sport, they're willing to help you. But it's very easy to forget the people that are helping you indirectly, like your parents, who are not really involved in that sport.
Yeah, no, I would say, well, to be honest, it's over time, it's my relationship with that has kind of evolved, right? When I was younger, both my parents would come to a lot of my competitions, and at the time were able to like finance that and support me in every single way I could ask for. Over time, things got rough growing up in some in some areas more than others, but like the support from my mom and grandmother really stood out mainly because they were definitely the two most invested people into like my well-being and well in general, right? But also for my fencing career. I mean, I would say that like the indirect support, but what I would honestly consider direct support because was financial, it was emotional, and sometimes logical. It was really just, I mean, it was everything to me, and it still is. I think that to see success, and this is something that I've once again been able to recall more recently, it has to be bigger than you, because we have the propensity to give up on ourselves. That's what Deion Sanders says. He says we have the propensity to give up on ourselves because it's true. It's like if you're running a marathon, if you're running and you're just going, and it's just you. Most people who are only worried about how they are feeling in that moment, in those hard moments, they usually only get as far as how they're feeling. But the people who do it for and with other people usually end up getting past further. And obviously that goes into the importance of a team and all that. But the people that supported me, in addition to my grandmother and mom, like even like my father, my coaches, like people outside of that, my tighter circle and within it, they didn't let me make too many excuses for myself. I would say that has to be the biggest thing. And they didn't, and I don't say that because they would always say, don't make excuses for yourself. I mean, of course I would hear some of that too, but it's because when they would sacrifice to help me, I didn't see them make excuses, even though it wasn't always convenient and it wasn't always easy. And I think that just takes a big point in life, because in life, I think you have people who help you, right? And the people that help you and complain while helping you, they're not helping you, they're helping themselves. But the people that help you, and even when it's hard on them, can still find joy in your happiness. I mean, that's love in its own, but that's also definitely a great part of what it's made me.
Yeah, I think it does come back to love, and it's weird because like there will be moments like throughout this podcast where I've had to change so much, and obviously it's so easy to make excuses because that's the easiest thing in the world. But when people go, no, don't, because I think that's in a way. I mean, I feel like by having excuses, you're setting yourself up for failure because you're just trying to find the one reason and not realizing that if you want to create something special, if you want to do something special, that has to come from within you. And you have to recognize the mistakes you made. And yeah, you can celebrate the successes, but recognize that there's always room to grow. And when you have a support system that's able to help you in whatever way, not just in a good way, but also be like that, have that tough love, if that makes sense, where they're just like, hey, don't make excuses or don't do X, Y, and Z. Because if you want to get to a great place, this is what you got to do. And you have to put in 100% of the work. And I think, especially as an athlete, you can't make excuses because you have to go in and you go out and you have to put the best version of you.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I really agree. And in the times where I've been successful, I've done a great job at not making excuses. And in my lowest points, I've caught myself finding reasons to explain for it, and then just realize that's probably the reason why I didn't do so well. So yeah, no, I mean, I agree.
I want to talk about the recruitment process because when you said that when you were little, you didn't think you'd be here today. Um, and so tell me about the recruiting process, what that was like, and ultimately what led you to deciding to commit to Ohio State to compete in foil fencing.
So when it comes to recruitment, well, it was a very long haul journey. The way it works in the country is usually if you get recruited, you would have to be or want to be in your sophomore year, probably top 20 to top 15 in the junior category, and at least top 8 in the cadet category. And then the division, the senior category, which is like the adults, you want to be like top 25, top 30. And that was for people who got a scholarship. Like everyone who got a scholarship, I mean, it's fencing, it's not football. So only 10 people in each class probably get a scholarship per weapon. And that was like my KPI. I mean, I knew that I had to be there. And what's crazy is as I was coming up before school started talking to me, I was actually ranked that high end of freshman year, sophomore year. I was 20th in the junior category or something like that, top 8 in the cadet category, trying running for the cadet world team. And those were some things that had set me apart. I remember specifically there was a great result that I had. It was where I'd gotten top 8 at a Division I North American Cup in about 2000. I think it was in 2019. And I remember I had a conversation with the head coach of Notre Dame. So from that point in 2019, I was set. I knew that I was going to get into pretty much, or not get into, but I knew that I was going to get recruited by whatever school I wanted. But also like whatever school I wanted, I mean, to me meant not an Ivy, and it was either going to be Ohio State, Notre Dame, or Penn State because those were your top 5. With Notre Dame being number 1, Columbia being up there, Princeton also being up there, and Harvard being in your top 6. Um, so from that point, I mean, I was on a roll, right? When I was 13, I was competing at the local level all the way up until I was like 14. When I just turned 15, I'd competed at summer nationals. And at that time in the cadet event, I'd gotten maybe like last place almost, right? But the year after at that same competition, I got like top 16. And then the year after that, I got, I believe, like top 8 or something within there. And my progression was pretty exponential in that regard when I was younger. Obviously, the older you get, the harder it gets to keep leaping like that. But since I was having those big jumps consistently, and even in the lows, I was still looking forward. That was what helped me like get on the spotlight. And when it came down to it, yeah, I was able to visit those schools. And what really honestly separated or made me choose Ohio State was when I had visited the other schools. I didn't get to visit Penn State, but I visited Notre Dame and then a couple other schools too that I just wanted to visit. But I had visited Notre Dame and I realized I couldn't live there for 4 years. You wasn't going to see me living in South Bend, Indiana for 4 years. They're a great fencing team and all that, but yeah, I'm not doing that. But then when I came to Columbus, I mean, I had been to Columbus many times, and it was because like there's a couple national events that they do at the convention center here in downtown in the short north. But I was familiar with Columbus. I knew what was going on, and it's Ohio State. I wanted to go to a big school. I wanted to be able to meet a lot of people, and I wanted to be able to be in a place that could set me up for life after fencing. Now, another amazing thing that happened was my coach growing up, Rolando Tucker, he is an Olympic medalist and world medalist and an amazing fencer and a legend, as well as my current coach at Ohio State, Elvis, um, Gregory Gill. But they were on the Cuban national team together. And prior to me coming to Ohio State, I had found out that Elvis was going to be coming to Ohio State. He was actually coaching in Italy before. And when I found out that he was going to be coming to Ohio State, I mean, it just made a lot of sense because the coaching style was somewhat similar, and I had known and heard a lot of amazing things about their coach. And ironically, soon after I committed to Ohio State, I found out that my coach from back home was going to be the foil coach at Notre Dame because of a job opening there. So very interesting timing, but it all worked out very well.
Yeah, I think it is nice to be able to be around a place that has, I guess, a similar background or similar style to what you do, because I think the transition is much easier. But I can't speak for other schools, but I will say, I mean, if you do live at Ohio State, it's one of the best environments out there. So I think this is a really great way for other people listening, if they are athletes, to be like, maybe I should go check Ohio State out. Because I think when people will look at Columbus and go, well, it's not like Los Angeles or Seattle, but I think it's very easy to underestimate how beautiful Columbus or Ohio State University's campuses are, especially like their main campus. So I'm glad that you chose at the end of the day, because here we are today. And
Yeah, and I wouldn't do it any other way. Even in the lowest points, I'm very glad with my decision, and I'm not gonna lie, my intuition is amazing. I mean, I when I committed here, I pictured everything going this way. I really did,
yeah,
and it happened the way that I wrote it down to happen.
I also like how you kind of analyzed what that journey was like for you as an athlete. Because growing up in high school, I've seen a few athletes who, not only obviously you mentioned like it's not just the athletic side, but also the academic side. And you also tend to forget how difficult it is to be able to be a student athlete. And so being able
Yeah.
to talk about that journey you had to get to where you are today was really interesting. And I think it really lets me know, or hopefully the audience understand, just how difficult it is to be a student athlete, because we only see the outside. We'll just go, oh, Edriss is very talented at what he does. He's very good at fencing and whatnot. But then we don't really know what it's like to be you. And we didn't understand the journey and all the things that had to go your way or the things that didn't go your way, how you're able to overcome those obstacles. So I think it really does allow, I mean, talking about that journey really understands like how difficult being a student athlete is. Not just the academic side, but definitely that athletic journey. It doesn't matter what school you go to. It is extremely difficult.
Yeah, I agree. And and in being a student athlete, it's crazy. I've never labeled it as being difficult. You know why? Because at the end of the day, if you're a student athlete, you've been a student athlete your whole life. Because to be a student athlete at the high level in college, you had to be doing something right in high school. And then sometimes maybe high school was even harder for some people in some ways. I think it's all very situational. Um, for me, yeah, I think being a student athlete is hard if you're not used to it. You know what I mean? Because here, I walk around campus and I look at people who go to all in-person classes every day and I laugh. I'm like, I could never do that. I would never do that. I ain't got time for that. I'm serious. That's how I look at it because, and stuff like that. I see the people who they have a job, they in pre-med and they doing something else. And I look at that and I actually be thinking that's harder than what I do. You know what I mean? Literally. Because you know what I mean? I like the same way that like I look at someone who's in pre-med or just one of them like really hard majors pretty much, or just anyone who's really serious in school and trying to see it through past a 4-year degree. I think that if you are, and I'm not saying like the outcome is, I'm not talking about outcome, I'm just talking about just school. I think that people who are dedicated and have a lot of things going on probably just that's those are the people that I can relate to be honest. And I've definitely learned more about that, especially as I've been understanding people more and understanding what they do with their time. It's really kind of helped me really understand that being a student athlete ain't hard. You just gotta get used to it.
Yeah, I
That's
like
that would if there's one thing you could quote me on, I'd say quote me on that.
I was gonna say, I like the fact that you're able to just realize that like just the way you see things is different from how other people see things, and then it just lets you really understand like what you're going through, and that it may not be the same way for others. So I think that's really cool to
Well,
see.
yeah. I also want to add, it's also about capacity because what I've been learning recently, especially when studying the people that I look up to in regards to like successful entrepreneurs and successful athletes, and the people who do things at a high level, they have the capacity to do so, and to have that capacity, they weren't just born with it. They were able to gain that by every single time that something made life hard on them, they were able to just make it to the next level and the next level and the next level. And after you make it past 100 levels, you look behind you and you realize it kind of feels like you're like, oh, well, I could have handled that differently. That could have been easier, you know. And I think that that's probably the reason why it allows me to look at people in that regard, because I don't look at someone who is doing something that someone might think is easy and say that, oh, they're underachieving, because for some people doing the things that we might not know what they're doing might be very hard for them. But then, and that's kind of what it has to do with.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think it's very easy to forget that, like, if you might think it's easy, but then maybe you have to realize like what it means to them, and then like the things that you do, what it means to you. And if you try to do the thing, it's very easy to underestimate that you probably can't do what they do. I remembered when I started doing this podcast and my vision was, let's just talk about life and everything. And then my friend went, oh, anyone can do that. And then they saw me do the type of conversations they have and being able to meet new people from all over the country and maybe all over the world. And then he went, yeah, I can't do the thing that you do. I can't be able to have those conversations. I can't be able to meet new people. I can't be able to do that. So it does allow you to really put into context about the fact that what seems easy may be difficult, and what may be easy for you may not be easy for others.
Oh yeah, yeah. I've learned that. I would say I've learned that in making a mistake, and I would say the biggest mistake that taught me that was definitely comparing myself to people and situations and ignoring the context. It's so easy, yeah. I mean, it's so easy to look at somebody else and what they have or don't have, and wish that you had it or didn't have it. But everyone lives in their own movie. They really do. And it's crazy how much our assumptions can paint this picture in our head about what something may be. But I think it's just very important to look at things for what they are. 100%.
I now want to transition into the name, image, likeness deal, or the name, image, likeness thing, because I think this was a thing maybe in 2019, 2020. It could be earlier. But it was a really important moment for athletes because it's about how you're able to profit off different partnerships. And I remember that was how I connected with you, because I heard about the fact that at the time you partnered with Degree's Breaking Limit plan, or Breaking
Yeah,
Limits.
I'm still with their Breaking Limits team actually. Yeah, that was actually like Degree is actually like still a partner. They're actually the one company that I really like Degree because they weren't about let's get you to post this thing and then give you cash. They said we're gonna take you in and you're gonna do this over this amount of time and you're gonna learn and meet people and grow. And it's a partnership actually more than a sponsor.
Yeah, actually, and you kind of answered what I was going to ask you, but I do want to be able to talk about, first of all, do talk about what that breaking limit plan or breaking limit
Yeah, I got
thing
you.
is, but also how has the name, image, likeness deal helped you as an athlete? Because it's very easy, because like you said, it's not just
Yeah.
about cash, it's more than that.
Yeah. I mean, it's not just about cash, but it's about cash. You know what I'm saying? Because at the end of the day, all right, so growing up, like, I mean, but like I know a lot of people at Ohio State always get like a nice monthly deposit. Well, not a lot, but statistically, the greater amount, like the majority does, right? We look at the numbers. Um, for me, my financial security has definitely been tested many times through college, and with NIL being an option, I had to hustle. I knew from the day that I saw that on Twitter that I was going to be, well, I don't know if I was the first fencer, but I definitely know that out of all the fencers and who did them deals out and showed out, I knew that. But I knew that I was going to be the one to get on this opportunity before I could let myself not. And it helped me a lot. The money that I was able to make, obviously, I'm not going to say whether it was enough or not because it wasn't about that, but I'm very grateful for it because it has put me in a position that has allowed me to first off open up many doors, develop more confidence, understand another side of an industry, and yeah, I mean, ultimately establish more financial security. And yeah,
How difficult is getting an NIL deal? Because then once again, I think one of the biggest misconceptions that I've had with student athletes, it's that like you're really good at what you do without realizing that there are so many times where you failed, and all the things that you're seeing, that's because of all the things that didn't go your way. But then it's very easy to also forget that while getting an NIL deal is difficult, um, how much difficult is it compared to how I say it? Because I feel like some of the challenges you might have to deal with is obviously try to be the best, but then also when people think of NIL deal, it's more about, I think, the more popular sports. So I usually hear like football players get NIL deal, basketball players get NIL deal,
yeah,
but then very rarely do we see other athletes and other sports get a chance at getting those name, image, likeness deals.
yeah, for sure. Well, I'm not gonna lie, it wasn't that hard for me. Um, and I say that as in it wasn't that hard for me. Somebody else might look at how I did it and been like, "Oh wow, that was hard for him," but it wasn't that hard for me. It was fun. It's a game. It really is, and I don't mean that in a way to disrespect the game, but I mean even the people running the game know it's a game, and I love it. I was very grateful to have met Zach Beebe. He is the founder of NIL Management and helped me actually get my first deal with Degree. And but at the same time, meeting him wasn't hard. I just had the propensity and the drive and the initiative takingness to reach out to him and say, "Hey, listen, I know that I'm not a football player or a basketball player, but I got sauce. And fencing is a unique sport, and I represented it in a very unique way for many reasons." Um, and from that message, I mean, he knew that it was true, and from there, he was able to start reaching out to other brands. But before that, I had taken the initiative actually by myself to reach out to local businesses. Actually, Playa Bowls. Playa Bowls was the first. It's on Lane or on North High Street on North Campus. I reached out to Playa Bowls because I saw that they were doing this little T-shirt deal. They was giving people T-shirts. You take a picture and then athletes get 25% off. And I said, okay, you know what? This might not be this ain't Nike, this ain't Lululemon or nothing like that. But if I can go and I can just do this and see what it's like and sign a contract and get a benefit, it'll give me something to keep chasing. And I think just being mindful of that, it kind of like pushed me to like really realize ways that I could capitalize off of my name, image, and likeness. And yeah, I mean, I'm not over here with like a million followers, but at the end of the day, I mean, anyone who sees what I have going on knows that it's unique and they know that it's coming with passion. And I think that brands see that that I bring that energy, and that's what they're looking for. When it comes to skills and performance, to be honest, NIL hasn't really affected my performance at all because what sold me, or like, well, not sold me, but what really helped me get these opportunities wasn't even my results. They wasn't asking me too much about my fencing results. They was asking me just more about my character and my story. And so I that's so when we take it like that, I mean, I didn't really feel any extra pressure to keep performing because before NIL, why was I performing so hard? It wasn't for NIL, it was for me. It was for my family, for the people around me that just are able to call me their friend, their son. You know what I mean? So I would say that's definitely like what made it easy is not really feeling that pressure. And at times, I have at times, but I would say it had nothing to do with my performance, thankfully.
Yeah, two things. Well, firstly, I'm really glad that you were able to have an NIL deal because I think that there has been there's been times where you just wish that people are able because people are able to get compensated, rewarded because you guys are putting in so much work and effort to be able to represent Ohio State, whatever that school may be, at the highest level. But I also think, and you kind of brought this up when it came to your passion and your story and who you are. It ties back to the why you do the things that you do, rather than focusing on whatever that end goal or that result may be. Because you're doing it because for yourself, you're doing it for the people who believed in you, the first people that believed in you, and not worried about cash. And I think one of the things I've learned through this podcast is that don't worry so much about, I guess, the rewards or like the final
Yeah,
product. Worry about just just being the best version of you, whatever that may be, whether
yeah,
it's podcasting, athletics, entrepreneurship. You're doing it because you want to make an impact on people. And if you're doing it because of the fame or whatever that success story might be, then you kind of have to think about think about what's if there's something else out there. And it's not to like bash on people's goals. It's just it goes back to why you do things in the first place.
yeah. I mean, well, let's get one thing straight though. Food and water are not free, so it's always about the bag. But the bag cannot be the number one driving force because I mean, the people who are only motivated on money, you see them in a magazine and the stupid things that they buy or the mistakes that they made. And they weed themselves out quickly. That's what I've learned. And honestly, growing like being younger, a lot of me would kind of think about like what there is to gain. And even now, I mean, we're human beings. Of course, we all want instant gratification and stuff. But yeah, I mean, the virtue is being able to really identify why and make a plan to execute. And yeah, not stay distracted by the money for sure. Or like not even the money, is just the idea of what could happen and not focusing. Yeah, I agree with you. Not focusing on the result. Because sometimes, I mean, success might not be money. Sometimes it can be people who are it could be a response that you want, but it doesn't always have to be money. And money's nice.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I now want to talk about let's talk about the impact. Um, you have the app, or you said, I think before we started doing this podcast, the Blok app is coming out late June, and I want to be able to talk about what that app is. And obviously, like I mentioned in the introduction, where you want to change how people view their social lives and engage with calendar apps. Tell me what led you to the idea of creating this app. Was it specifically, I guess, like going back to the idea of how precious time is, or tell me about the background?
So when I was in elementary school, my mother had pulled me out of the elementary school I was in and decided to homeschool me. Reason being, the area in which that school wasn't a really good and safe area. And there were just many things that at the time she wanted to protect me from. And of course, I went back to normal school, like through middle school and high school. But at that time, that was the best thing. And we did this program. I forgot what it was called, but it was like online, but also like in paper, like on paper. And it was asynchronous. I had tests to submit to the school and assignments periodically, like, but my mom would mail them. But I would do it pretty much at my own pace. Now, my mom was a stay-at-home mom at the time and also was my teacher. But what separated, or I guess what like one of the separating factors from that was I was responsible for my own schedule. My mom, she really trusted me and pushed me to not be, I guess, complacent with my time and not be organized with my time. And eventually it became almost just like a big part of my identity, whether it's I'm on time, whether it's the way that I'm planning my time, budgeting my time, creating extra time. And just from a young age, having that responsibility and that freedom and developing confidence with being in control of my day was definitely one of the biggest things. And now when I came to college, I mean, these skills were really put to the test. I mean, these skills were put to the test through high school also, but I passed them well. But in college, it was like, okay, now I'm actually using a calendar app to organize my day. That happened to be one of the things. But I was able to, I mean, really refine my time management skills and improve them. And sophomore year, in the summer of sophomore year, I had an internship at Nationwide, and it was in their controllership department. I was in finance at the time, so I was like, it was a perfect it was like an accounting internship, perfect context, perfect timing. But most of what I did in the internship obviously wasn't what I thought it was going to be. It wasn't really numbers and fun stuff. It was just like tedious, like meaningless, like office tasks. And from that moment, I knew that I was never ever going to work in a corporate setting. I knew that that was not for me. And if this interview ever eliminates my chances at getting that job in that setting, then oh well, recruiter, I'm sorry, but no, I knew that wasn't how I wanted to get down, and I knew that wasn't for me. And of course, I knew that the other path, which was starting my own business, would be much harder. But I've always been a self-studier and a self-paced learner. So at Nationwide, we would use Microsoft Teams. And I was responsible for always scheduling meetings with people in the department. And what I would do is I would go on Teams and I would see their calendars and then just find times for them to meet and schedule like their weekly meetings or like these like little coffee chats or whatever like BS they had going on there. But and of course it was boring. I also in the internship was responsible for this process that they do there called customer journey mapping, where pretty much they just get on Zooms and they get on Figma, which is like a diagramming app and also used for design. And they pretty much ask workers or employees at Nationwide how they are thinking and feeling about their like pretty much like internal processes. So I would ask them about like their corporate card usage and pretty much just try to get the employees to like say their problems and then write them down and then give them to the person that I was reporting to. But customer journey mapping, I mean, taught me how to listen to product users and how to also like get them to talk more than me talking. And in doing that and in the calendar sharing, I was saying, I wonder if we could use something like Teams, but for my friends, because like you ever like text somebody and then the plans never leave the group chat, or just you have to, and too much miscommunication, juggling between multiple apps because now you gotta check your calendar and your email and then your notes app or your text or your reminders, or you going on Instagram, but then you going on Snapchat and you seeing what you got to do, you're checking Carmen. And these are, and the reason I'm saying this is because initially it was what I would do to get things done, because I mean I live a very busy, fast-paced, dynamic life, and I think that a lot of ambitious college students, what I think many students at Ohio State are, do as well. I mean, I know that there like a lot of people I know who are up to something, they don't have 5 hours of just doing nothing. And if they do, then that's probably a problem. And that's their problem. But we are here to, but that's kind of where it came from. And I was like, well, I wonder if I'm the only person who has this problem. So I started talking to my friends. And as they started to quickly validate that, that's when, I mean, I went out to talking outside of my friends, and then now just to like quote unquote random people, started talking with like just like my best friend who is also one of our co-founders, Mike Zhao, and he's our product designer. But I started just ideating these ideas by him and saying, hey, I wonder if we could do something where you just go on their calendar, you see when they're free, and you tap. And then to make it fun, since calendar apps are boring, we allow it to be a social media app also, like Instagram, since everybody loves posting what they're doing. So we kind of just started drawing up mock-ups of that. And then from there, we've just been iterating and iterating and iterating, but still solving the same problem. And yeah.
Yeah, I was laughing because calendar apps can be relatively boring, and I like the fact that you're able to combine how do you make it the best experience possible. So using like
Yep.
social media like Instagram and then incorporating that into a calendar app just to make it more entertaining. And then I think for a lot of us, we've noticed how working a 9 to 5 job, not a lot of people have not a lot of people enjoy that. So to be able to go and pursue your own dream or pursue your own passion is really cool to see, which leads me to what I want to ask you about, which is what has been the journey like in starting your own business? Because like you said, it's
Ooh, yeah, I
extremely
got you.
difficult because you don't have anything, but tell me about
Yeah.
that process.
I mean, right now I'm in the peak of it, so you're catching me at a good time because we still haven't made a dollar, right? It's so okay. I came up with the concept 8 months ago. From there, I reached out to my best friend, Mike Zhao, and we pretty much just started like kind of going back and forth, just about like ways that this could work out design wise. But it wasn't really like that serious yet. I was even like having like whiteboard discussions with a lot of my friends here, just like at Ohio State, and I was talking and we were just like planning in the beginning. You know, it's funny. A lot of like my friends were very interested in the idea, and as certain, and of course, like over time, over a couple of weeks, they'd phase out and not necessarily be on it. But I was very, very, very persistent with how this was going to happen. And I knew that it would. And I think that just within the first couple of weeks of just, and I was setting up meetings with my friends and stuff, trying to get things together as if I was a CEO and knew what I was doing. But just being able to do that and sticking through that, that was what really got it started. Because after 4 weeks, I was able to look back at that and be like, oh wow, wait, I'm actually kind of moving with things. So I had reached out to a friend and mentor of mine, and he had connected me to Scott Griffin from the Keenan Center of Entrepreneurship at Ohio State. And they have this thing called the President's Buckeye Accelerated from February or January until March. And I had applied in December, but applications were closed in December. So I kind of got like the good look, like they just let me apply. And the application was just 60 seconds of me talking about my concept. And I remember I was in the same seat and I said just pretty much the problem that we wanted to solve and why. And at the time, we had no developer, no official product designer, no team. It was just me going in, and it was Tuesday and Wednesday for 1 hour for 8 weeks. And I would go there and and at the end of the accelerator, which was 8 weeks, have an opportunity to pitch for $50,000. So we didn't. I'll cut the story short and say that we didn't win the $50,000, but in those 8 weeks, I was able to meet a lot of entrepreneurs and get very close with a lot of the people who were running that program. And I'm still very been Ashley Lippincott, amazing people who really helped jumpstart this for me and really believed in me and showed me what I could do and the opportunity that it was, and like really helped me feel like I could do it. Because I'm not gonna lie, when I first walked into that room, and it was like the first session. I had no idea what was going on. I was the only person there who I think, or one of the few people there who was there without a team, who was there as a first time founder. But I wasn't afraid of that. I was like, oh wait, I feel like I'm in my beginning fencing class again. So, anyways, so through the program, we would every week we would learn about like just different things. Like for instance, we'd learn about business models. We had sessions about like presenting and stuff. But I was able to kind of I was starting to really understand what this entrepreneurship thing was like and what doing it the right way was like. And right after our pitch, I mean, I remember this was my first presentation ever, and I practiced probably 4 hours a day for like 5 days leading up to it. It was a 7 minute presentation. And I remember finishing it at like 6 minutes and 58 seconds because it was just my practice mentality. I practice how I play it so that when I play, it's practice. So just because I'm always coming in with that mentality and attitude, I think that it was able to help me really breach through that part. And what that part was just getting us out of the ideation stage. So so at the end of what it was called the boost camp, that's what the 8 week sessions were called. Right after I had found out that my pitch didn't make it into the top 6 who would win the 50K, I ended up meeting with someone named Benjamin Davis, who was he was like competing with his team called Insider Viz, and they had already been advanced to the finale because they had won a pitch competition earlier on. But him and I we were working on this thing called Wharton Interactive together, and we were kind of just clicking and talking, and he's a developer. And he's also a full-time developer. And I mean, really, he's a genius. Right after we met up at the art pack, I hit him up. I said, hey, can we talk? I want to learn how to develop this app. I'd even ask him to be on my team. That's a little hint. We ended up, and mind you, he won the competition. Like his team won. So they're some dogs. We ended up talking. I showed him what I had going on. We had scheduled to talk for like only 30 minutes, and we ended up talking for 2 hours. Within that day, now we were talking about how we can make this app come true. And then once I introduced him to Mike, us three, we were just able to get steam rolling because we were like, okay, we work well together. We finally know what it takes to build this thing. Now let's start making it real. And that was about 3 months ago that we were at that point. And then ever since then, we've been conducting many user interviews all the time. We have our landing page, www.blokapp.com. And on our landing page, you'll be able to sign up for early access for our beta that is coming out in late June, early July. The timeline's still iffy. But since then, I mean, like just last week, we officially became legally incorporated and got our requirements to get this thing on the App Store. So things are moving fast. And things are moving fast. Things are moving unexpectedly. Things are moving in different directions. But the one thing that is staying the same is my level-headedness, our team, and our goal, which is to bring Ohio State and young professionals an app that makes them feel like making plans is the least stressful part of their day. And that finding the time to hang out with the people that you care about is not something that you got to worry about. And it doesn't have, and being organized don't got to be boring and lame. It don't got to be confusing on these like really like stressful, annoying apps. It can instead be fun and cool, just like Snapchat and Instagram. And I think that, and we're not going to stop. I know that for sure.
Yeah, I'm really excited to see this app because I mean, yeah, scheduling and just finding time for whatever that may be, it's so difficult. So I'm really looking forward to it. I can't wait to see when it comes
Oh
out.
yeah, and I'll make sure that you get it. I'll make sure that you get it very, very early because what we'll do, we'll sign up for the landing page. But after that, we should definitely talk sometime and maybe get like an interview, and I'll show you kind of like some of our screens and get your feedback even on how this could help you schedule like podcasts with like with future invitees and everything. I mean, we're really trying to make this very seamless and multi-use. It's not only it doesn't only have to be for like social scheduling. It could also be for like a freelancer who have people requesting their time. We just want to make it accessible and easy for sure.
No, I really do appreciate it. Now, before I let you go, you actually brought up something which is the idea of feedback. And this is something we were talking about before we started recording, which is getting honest feedback. What have been some of the what has been one of the things you've learned in terms of trying to make whatever your passion project is the best that it can be? And so I'd love for you to talk about, before we end, the idea
Yeah.
of criticism, and tell me a little bit about like how you've been able to handle criticism in the fact that it's not about people saying bad things about you, but it's more about, okay, how can I make sure that for the average viewer or for those who may not like it, how do I make sure that it's the best possible app? Because ultimately, criticism is something that we know we want to receive, but once we start hearing it, we're like, nope, we don't want to hear it. We only want to hear the things that we want to hear. Like we only want to hear the positive things,
Yeah.
not the negative things.
No, yeah, I mean, definitely got to bite your tongue and it's a pill to swallow, I would say. And I'm still taking those hits. Don't get me wrong. I mean, uh, first off, the key is ignore what your mom, dad, and friends got to say. I did that. I tried that, and it's helped to a certain degree. Don't get me wrong. They have. I'm not saying they steered me astray, but nobody cares unless you are solving their problem. And this is just a basic rule of thumb. You have got to talk to the people whose problem you are solving, and the people whose problem you are solving, you probably don't personally know them, and you need to talk to people that represent a great part of that distribution. So for us, I mean, it started with my attitude. The reason I say it started with my attitude is because from a young age, I've never really been afraid to hear no. I've never been afraid to lose. I would, like, growing up, I would fence the older guys and lose like 15-1 and then be talking crap to them and then try to beat them like 5 minutes later and then still lose and then say, you know what, next week I'm gonna beat you. And I think that anything less than that will leave you to get eaten. Because at the end of the day, I think that you have to be really aggressive and for what you want, and you have to really go out there and find it, because nobody is going to give you those answers that you want or don't want unless you go find it. And what I mean by that is go talk to a random person. And I'm not saying this to you, but just in general, right? General practice. You're going to get a more accurate response and feedback from a random person who you're offering to buy coffee on the street than anyone else. And if you can keep the pool as random as that and be able to take things for what they are and not take them personally, I mean, that helps a lot. I mean, I've had certain people in my life who I've talked to my idea about, and they would be rated. They would say things that didn't make me feel good about my idea, that didn't make my idea feel important. But at the end of the day, I looked at who they were and what they had going on, and then I said, you know what, I understand why. But then at the same time, on the flip side, I've had people who I've talked to and who have given me a lot of support, but and I'm not saying that they were doing this to hurt me, but it's just because they had love for me and didn't want to hurt me, that they would say only the good and not the reality. And that's why I say you can only find that from that random person on the street. But I mean, I've learned a lot of lessons doing that. I think in my lowest points and in points and at times where things aren't easy, sometimes it's very easy to go and look for that answer that'll make you feel good. But if you can like stick to it and just stay gritty and still keep taking in those answers that don't necessarily make you feel good, but that are something to learn from, I mean, nothing's going to stop you at all. And this is easier said than done. I'd be lying if I said that I did that perfectly. I mean, even now I still do some user interviews with my friends sometimes just for fun, or like if you and I were to talk about the app, I would love to casually do that. And there's stuff like, but at the same time, there are many times where I will stick my neck out and really just put myself in a position to really like take anything and hear anything. And I definitely get told more no's than yeses, whether it's been in fencing, whether it's been in school, whether it's been in entrepreneurship. NIL, for deals, I have less deals that I want than more deals that I wanted to get. I have like for medals, I have less medals than I wanted. At competitions, I mean, at the end of the day, I've only medaled at like probably 5 or 10% of my competitions, if that. But I'm comfortable with that. I'm not afraid of that. Right now, we don't have an app built yet. We don't have users, but that's okay, because the only thing that eliminates fear is action. And this is a golden rule for me. So I would say just being able to stick to that and always like pushing myself to have that like mentality has definitely been what's been keeping it going.
Yeah, oh my gosh. And one of the things I love talking about you and why I'm so grateful for our friendship is I remember when I first told you about some of the failures I had, and you were just like, don't worry about the failures, just work on trying to be the best version of you, and don't be afraid to be able to take feedback. Because throughout my podcast so far, I think I've done it for about 4 or 5, 6 months, it's always about learning and trying to be better 1% each day, and not being afraid to hear, I guess, the worst thing, not from like a personal sense, but more about like, hey, you need to do this because right now it looks like this. So it's about controlling what you can control and what you can't control, but also focusing on,
Yes.
if you are able to focus on the things that you control, what are some of the things that you can do, and how can you make sure that you can make it the best version? And so I will send preview clips. I'll say, do I need this? Do I need that? And then once people go, that's great. This is exactly what you need. Obviously, there's still more to do, but right now, what you have, this is great. And so it's just a matter of being consistent. And then if you find a problem, recognize it and then figure out how to solve that problem. And I think that's really what makes entrepreneurship special. And I don't want to say that I'm an entrepreneur by any means, but
But no, but you are though. No,
in
and
a,
every single, I mean, if you look at the definition of entrepreneurship, you're an entrepreneur. An entrepreneur, everyone always thinks an entrepreneur is like someone who's trying to go to Silicon Valley and work on like on top of 40 floors. But an entrepreneur is someone who decides that they want to be a campus barber. Those are probably the people who have the highest chances of ending up on that Silicon Valley. If you decided that while you're in school, you want to start a podcast before waiting for that little piece of paper and the 4 years of certification to go do it, you're an entrepreneur. And like I really and I really respect that. And for students too, the students who are living their life going to school and going to work and doing and Lord knows what people do. I mean, everybody's life is different. And not a lot of people probably think that I fans go to school and do what I do, but all of that, what I've learned is that is really entrepreneurship. Entrepreneurship is really, when it comes down to what separates the greatest entrepreneur from the worst, it ain't had nothing to do with the degree. Sometimes it has something to do with looks, but at the end of the day, in the grand scheme of things, it had nothing to do with looks. I mean, your CEO, you probably want to be tall, but besides that, nothing to do with looks. But really, it was like you said, and I love the way that you worded it. Just the people who aren't afraid to fail. I mean, as simple as that. And I think that if you do that, you're an entrepreneur. And I mean, you look at entrepreneurs, some of them, they end up coming from big like FAANG companies like Facebook, Amazon, Google. They come from those companies. And then next thing you know, they're running their own company from what they learned there. But in their 40-year track to getting to one, no one called them an entrepreneur. But I'm sure that they probably knew that they were an entrepreneur at heart. So I'm very glad to be able to talk with other entrepreneurs like yourself because I'm very grateful to and I make it always my goal and a must to surround myself around people who are entrepreneurs like yourself because people like you and other people that you're inspiring are the ones who are really going to change this world and fix what we got going on.
yeah, I appreciate it. I'll add one more thing, which is we're always going to face obstacles in our way, but you found the right niche if you're willing to embrace these obstacles. Because some people go
Yes.
into it like for example, I have a lot of friends who go into med or computer science or engineering and they go because of the money. But then there are also those who
Yeah.
go, look, I failed this. It didn't go my way, but you know what? I love what I do. I love the impact that I can make in the future. So I'm willing to embrace these obstacles. It doesn't matter how many times I fail, I'm going to embrace them. And then one day I will overcome them. It's just a matter of trusting that process, trusting that journey. And I feel like you're much better off doing that than just being someone going, I want to do this because it will get me rich. Because when you have the mentality, and we
Yeah.
talked about
Yeah.
this, you're not going
And
to be
no,
successful.
that was me actually coming into college. I mean, coming into college, I went to Fisher. I said, "Oh, I'm gonna get a business degree," and right after school, I want to go do this, and this. And then I realized, but why? But why? Then once I answered, and this is a very hard question. It's very hard to look at yourself in the mirror and really, and only you can find it, not your mom, not your dad, not your sister, not your brother. Hypothetically, only you can find that answer, and it's kind of crazy, and it can be scaring, and it can push you down. But once you answer why, you'll realize that there's definitely many more ways to get to that end goal. And 100%, I'm very grateful that that's definitely like the path that I've taken. And even in the hardships, I ain't got no regrets because it's still fun. I'm having an amazing time doing it, and I'm meeting wonderful people like you, man. This is amazing.
Man, no, I'm grateful to have met you as well. And I know I've taken so much of your time, but I just want to say thank you so much for
Yeah,
joining
man,
the
I got time
podcast.
today.
thank,
Anytime. Thank
thank
you,
you
man. I
so
appreciate it.
No, I really
Take care.
appreciate it. You are just an amazing human being, and I can't wait to see what the app, or I can't wait to see the app when it comes out. I'll be
Yeah,
sure
hey,
to,
man. Yeah,
I'll be
let's
sure
meet in
to,
person sometime. Are you in Columbus or where you at?
yeah, well, okay, so I commute from home, but I'm always willing to meet new people and being around people that just want to make you a better person, regardless if it is regarding like your major and stuff or just as a human being. I love being around people like that. So I can't wait to meet you in person, and I wish you the best of luck with the app, with fencing, and just in general. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much, man. Take care. Stay blessed.
Thank you guys so much for listening to this episode. If you like what you saw, be sure to subscribe to this podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. You can also follow us on Instagram at the OMCG Podcast for more information on guests, preview clips, and more. Please continue to support this podcast in the future, and I can't wait to see you guys in the next episode.